back to my Happy Place home studio for part 2 of our series, Publishing Your Music. In part 2, we're going to talk about preparing your music, preparing your material for publication, and getting your material copyrighted. Both of these steps are obviously very, very important. Preparing your material is simply deciding what you're going to publish and having some idea where you're going to publish it so you know how the material needs to be prepared, getting it ready, and then we'll talk about the copyright process, which I feel is very important. If you're going to take the time and trouble to publish your work, you really should protect your work with a copyright. So let's get started by deciding how we're going to prepare our work for publication. Now, the most obvious question for you to answer is, what am I publishing? Just a single song? A small collection of songs like for an EP? Or do you have an entire CD that you want to put online and publish? As I said, in my case, for the actual example, actual publication that I'm doing, our music group that we had back in the late 1990s and early 2000s wrote and published an original piece of work that was a CD that we created a small number of and shared with family and friends. It was never actually published or distributed or sold or anything like that. So I'm reaching back in time to say, hey, I'm going to publish that work online, and this is the documentation process for doing so. Our work was called Original Spin, and it contained about 13 or 14 original tracks. So that's the example that I'm going to walk through today. And obviously, you have to fill in the blanks with what you're deciding to publish. Certainly, publishing a single track is an easy way for you to get started, and even a possible way for you to explore multiple publishing options before you commit a larger piece of work. All right, so let's take a look at how I'm going to go about collecting my material. So what is the key material when you're publishing a song? Well, words, music, lyrics, and the actual song itself are the key things that you're going to need in the process. Now, if you went directly to a publishing service, you would simply be uploading the song, and you would identify the authors of word and music, but you really wouldn't do much more than that. The copyright process is a little bit different, as you'll see. I have taken my CD and I have downloaded it into my Apple Music interface. That doesn't mean I put it on Apple Music. It just means it's available in the player, that the material is in the player, and that's where I'm going to get it from. So let's take a look at that. Now, a reminder for those of you who haven't watched any of my videos on my channel before that I don't see very well. So you'll see me doing a lot of zooming on the screen, but I hope that also helps you know exactly where I am. I spend a lot of time as I'm watching YouTube videos just chasing around. Okay, where was the mouse at when that was clicked? Again, partially because I can't see, but I think it makes it a little easier when I zoom in. So what I have here is the CD, which was called Original Spin. You see, I didn't upload any artwork or anything into my Apple Music here, but I do have all of the tracks. So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the first track here, which is called Stella, and right-click and show in Finder. So what that's going to do is it's actually going to show me the track in the Finder in whatever format that it's in. All right, so here in the Finder, when I said show in Finder, it shows me not only that track, but all of the tracks. So I can now simply keep this Finder window open and do what I need to do. These tracks are all in the Apple M4A format, which is probably not actually what I want to have it in for publication. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another application called Isotope to do the conversion. Now that part you can use whatever utility or whatever program you want. Many DAWs will do this, many different applications will do this. So you don't have to use the one I'm using. That's just what I have and what I use. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Isotope 9. Now, I like Isotope because it is very, very simple for this particular process, but Isotope 9 is a very great application in its own right. I'm not selling it here, but I'll just tell you that it's a really good mastering tool and something that you can use for more than just what I'm using it for here. All right, so to do the conversion that I want to do, I'm just simply going to drag and drop this track into the Isotope interface, and you can see it pulls it in. Now, when we created our CD back in 2003, we actually had it mastered, so you can see that all the volume levels here, according to the graph, are very high, but that's neither here nor there. Yours will be what it is. And all I really want to do here is do an export of this track. I'll choose File, Export Audio, and then we'll take a look at this screen here. Now, this really helps me do everything that I need to do, which is to put this output file into a format that is friendly to the publishing service that I'm going to end up using. Now, there can be variations depending on the publishing service that you use, but most of the time they are going to want a WAV file, 16-bit depth, and pretty straightforward settings, 44.1 for your sample rate. Now, that can differ, but those are the ones that we'll be working with, and the services that we're working with want those settings. I am going to make a couple of changes here. One is that I'm going to take the track number out of the name, keeping the WAV extension, and then I'm going to set my path to folder that I've created for the purpose, exports for publication here, and there we go. And all the other settings are correct. Again, I've got my bit depth set at 16, I've got my sample rate at 44.1, and I'm ready to go ahead and export this. Click OK, and it will go through the export, which happens very, very quickly. Now that material is ready for me to use in publication. Now again, to make it clear what I was doing there, I was taking my tracks from whatever format they're in right now, whether they're in your DAW or on a CD, wherever they are, and putting it into the format needed for a publication service for me to upload that. That's what I was doing. You don't have to use Isotope. You don't have to use Apple Music. That's just the vehicles that I use to get to that end result. Those tracks are now in the format that I want to upload to the publication service. Now let's talk about copywriting your work. I think many people skip this step when they put their material online. And it may be that this is becoming an anachronism to copyright your work. The major reason that you want to copyright your work, first of all, is if you feel it has value and that you might make money selling it, and that other people, if you don't copyright it, might want to use it because it's good stuff. The argument against it really is possibly that the publication services are monitoring such activity, especially on YouTube, so that if somebody tries to use your work, you will know it. But without copyright protection, it's unclear what that really means. So I think copywriting your work is a good material. You put a lot of time into creating that material, a lot of creativity. It's your intellectual property. Now, there is a cost to copywriting, which is another reason that people may not want to do it. The cost is not hugely expensive, but if you don't have much money, anything can be hugely expensive. Copywriting through the U.S. government copyright website, which is what I'm going to show you, is $65 per song. And so if you got 10 tracks, it's $650. So that can be daunting for many. But you know what? Hopefully you're in a position that you can make a decision that's not just financial, but is about protecting your work, your art, and protecting the revenue that you might produce with it. That's completely your call. What we're going to do is we're going to go through the process of copywriting material through copyright.gov. And all you really need to do that is the track, is your music. And of course, that does not have to be the final form of the music. If you just have it on an acoustic guitar and you can sing it, if there are lyrics, then that's going to protect your song, whatever other forms you might put it in, a fully produced track with lots of musicians, etc. So obviously, protecting your work as early as possible, especially if you intend to perform it or if it might get out before you're completely done producing it, is a good idea. So let's take a look at copywriting your work through the United States website, copyright.gov. Here we are on the copyright.gov website, and there's a lot of great material here, a lot of information that you can look into about copywriting. I'm not going to take you through much of that material at all. I'm just going to pretty much go directly to the site that allows you to copyright your work. Now, I already have an established account, and I have already copyrighted work, so I'm not going to be able to take you through the account creation process. It's pretty straightforward. When you go to this site, it will allow you to create an account and walk through a fairly easy process to do so. I'm going to show you, once you have that account created, how you can go through the process of copywriting your work. To log into the site, let's jump ahead and assume that you've followed some of these steps to get to the point where you could create your account, and you're going to go ahead and go log into that account. So under registration, here at the top, the very first click in the menu that pops up is register your work. And then there's a blue box down here. You can click to go to the site to log in. And here we are. Now, I always get these warnings because I don't use Mozilla. And you will probably not be using Mozilla and will probably get those warnings too. I have never had any problem with the site because of that. And this has my credentials already set up here. But if you don't have an account, you can create an account here. Under if you are a new user, click here to register. All right, so again, go ahead and go through that process. Click there to register, go through the registration process, fairly simple, and then return to this site so that we can log in and continue. All right, when you log in, if you have copyrights in process, as I do, you will see those here, and they will show as open cases. Each copyright is assigned a unique number and becomes a case, and you can track it right through. Now, over on the left-hand side are your main menu selections. So one that I'll show you here, if you have things in process, you can see everything that you've done by clicking all cases, and that will show you everything that you've done. And if your cases have been processed and the copyright has been awarded, or if it was denied, you'll have a case closed. But you can always go back and look at the history of all of your copyright cases. Now you can see that this list pretty much represents the 12 tracks from Original Spin that we are actually going to publish. And almost all of them are closed, and we have the copyrights on them. There are 4 that are open. One actually says working, which means that a caseworker has picked it up, it's in process, and they're working on it to be able to get the copyright issued. So some good information here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do the copyright on a 13th song that was actually not put out with the original CD, but I will be putting out with this re-release, if you will, as we publish this. And I'm going to create that copyright for a song called Love Gamble. Now, I actually have created templates on the site. The first time that I worked through the entire process, I made a template out of that because most of the songs were going to have the same settings. I'm going to use that template again here, which is going to be different than the first time you walk all the way through the copyright process, but the information involved is the same. So I just won't have to enter it here as part of this video. So I will use a template to create this copyright application. Now, my suggestion to you is that you do the same thing. Go through the whole process the first time. You pretty much have to. You don't have a template. But then if you're doing an entire CD and you're going to copyright all the material from it, make a template out of that process that you go through. And I will be able to show you how to do that as we get to the end of this process. All right, I zoomed in a little more because most of the screens don't take up that much real estate. And I'm going to use an existing template under the miscellaneous menu over on the left-hand side. That shows me a list of my templates. You notice I got two templates here, one that was created back in January and one that was created later. The first one was created for the songs that I was copywriting, and then the second was created for the songs that another author was copywriting, so it had a different template. And I'm just going to go ahead and use that first one since this is another song that I wrote. And we get directly into the copyright creation process. The first stop in the process is to determine the type of work that you are copywriting. And this is an important determination. If you are uploading a recording of your music and it's your original music in which you authored both the music and the lyrics, that is distinctly different than if you're just copywriting the music and the lyrics. Now, the assumption I'm making in this series is that you're actually uploading a sound recording. Again, whether it's just you singing the song or you playing and singing alone or a fully produced recording of your song, of your material. Now, when you make a selection here, and in this case, the selection, I've got a sound recording. If you're doing both the recording and the sound, if you're doing both the sound recording and the words and music, then you want to use sound recording. That is the proper selection. If you're just doing the words and music, then you want to use a work of the performing arts. Now, this is the part where I need to tell you, I'm not a copyright attorney. I'm just going through this process as a layperson. I've read the material here, which seems very clear and explicit, but I would not want to be responsible for you choosing the wrong one. So I want you to do your own research to make sure that you're making the right selection here. It very clearly lays out, if you are doing an original sound recording and the words and music of your song, then you can use the sound recording selection and cover both things. If you're not copywriting a sound recording, then you want to use the work of the performing arts. But please, take a look for yourself. Make sure for yourself that you're satisfied you're making the right selection here. So I'm choosing sound recording. And down below, there's a checkbox that you need to check that is already checked because this is part of my template. And make sure that you read that, what you're agreeing to very carefully there before you move on. And when you're ready to move on, up here at the top are your controls, and we're going to click on Continue. All right, our next stop is the title of the song. Because I'm using a template, I created the template when I was copywriting the song, I think too much. So it has both the title of the song and the nickname or another title of the song, ITTM. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply going to trash both of those things because that's not what I'm copywriting in this run through. So just click the little trash can all the way on the right hand side of the interface here. And then we're going to do a new entry for this song. And the type of work, or the type of song here, is the title of the work being registered. And the title is Love Gamble. Now, if you have any other names for the song, I'll go ahead and click on Save up above here. And that puts it in the interface. If I have other titles or aliases for the song, then I would go ahead and put those in here at this time. In this case, I don't, so I am ready to continue. The next section is called Publication and Completion. And it basically is going to ask you if you have published the work before, and also when you created the work, when it was completed. So in this case, I indicated no, the work has not been published before, and it was completed in 2003. Now, I mentioned earlier that we made CDs for friends and that type of thing. That is not what they're talking about with publication. Making a few CDs for your friends doesn't really count. And the year of completion is all that you're really looking for there. Now, there is another function on this particular screen, which is if you have pre-registered your copyright, which we're not covering here at all. So if you have done that, you've done that on your own, and you can put the information in here to indicate that you have pre-registered the work. And then let's go ahead to the next step when you've got that completed. The next section is authorship. Who is the author of this work? Now, in the case of this template, the author of the work is myself, and that is correct. So I don't have to actually make a change here. If I needed to put in a different author, I would trash this entry and make a new one. If I needed to add an author, I would click on New and add the author. So if you have multiple authors of the work, this is where you would put that in. So you wrote the music, somebody else wrote the words, or two other people wrote the words. This is where you can enter that and indicate those roles as you enter them. So if your authorship is more complex than just yourself, then you'll spend a little more time in this screen than you will if it's just you. So be sure to pay attention as you go through that. And I'll just start a new entry here, but not complete it. And you can see the information that you're putting in about the individual and or organization. And by the way, if you have an organization involved, a company, an entity that you've created to manage your works, or if you have a management entity involved, I'm not really covering that here, so you're going to want to spend a little more time on this to make sure that you've got that correct. But this is the information about the individuals. And then down here at the bottom, you've got personal information, and if one of the authors is deceased, you can indicate that here. And let's see, nothing really else to talk about here. But, you know, this is something you want to be very careful with if you actually are, if there's an organization involved in the authorship of your work. The next section is entitled Claimants, and this is anyone who has a claim on your work, including yourself. But if you have already signed away rights, have an agent, anyone else that has a claim to your work, this is where you would put them in as well as yourself. Now, my template, I've simply put in myself. And here again, if I drilled into that, it would just be the name and address and information about you as a claimant. Again, if you are also using a template, you would get rid of this if you need to put a different claimant in, but this is pretty straightforward to go in and enter. And again, I'll drill in here so that you can see there's an edit icon over here, what the information is. And I'm blurring out some of this, obviously. So it's pretty straightforward to put in your claimant information. Okay, on the next screen, we would enter any limitation of claim. So this is a screen I would just encourage you to read through carefully. If there is any limitation on your claim at all, if you're excluding the sound recording and that type of thing, you can just read this for yourself. And if you're using the right entry on that very first screen in sound recording, you would really not exclude the sound recording. But if you're using this just to do words and music, and again, there's a better selection for that, then that's where you would exclude the sound recording. Please just review this very carefully. Okay, on the next screen, you are going to talk about rights and permissions information. This is an optional screen. And if you have given rights or are giving permission to anyone else to your rights, this is where you would put that in. And as you can see, I have not entered anything here because it is optional and it does not really apply to my work. It might apply to yours. Continue on. All right, this is the correspondent screen. Whoever your correspondent is going to get the information from the Copyright Office when they need to share information with you. So the information you're going to get is notifications regarding the status, and that's usually just tied to your account. But when your copyright is actually registered, they're going to send you a very official looking document that shows you that. And here's an example of that document right now. In the next section, you actually can say, here's where I want you to mail the certificate. So you've got your initial correspondence, and then you've got the second entry for, here's where I want you to mail the certificate. This is pretty straightforward. Again, when your copyright is registered, they're going to mail you a certificate. This is where they're going to mail the certificate to. Okay, and then we get to special handling. Now, if you want to request an expedited handling of your work for whatever reason, this is where you can do that. And I have never done that before. I've never had reason to do that. So I can't really tell you what happens when you fill out this screen. But I think if you need an expedited handling and management of your copyright, like let's say you were really hoping to post it on YouTube in a month, but this process takes 3 or 4 months, then that's where you might request it. And there's a cost to it, and I just don't know the process as I've never done it. So if you need special handling, this is where you're going to fill that out. Okay, and next, you're going to certify that you're the creator of the work. Read this carefully. I certify that I am the author, etc. That's, again, you're making a very, very legal claim here to the authorship of whatever you are copywriting. Again, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not advising you. But you're making this statement to the government of the United States. So just like any other statement that you make to the government of the United States, like filling out your tax form, you want to be sure that you are saying something accurate here. And so you'll check that box, you'll fill in who you are, and put in any other information that you need to put in that's on this screen, and continue on. This final screen is a summary of everything that you have put in. And it is highly advisable that you go through this carefully and ensure that everything is correct, that you spelled everything correctly. That's an embarrassing mistake to make. And that, visually it all looks right. If something is wrong, you have the ability to go back up at the top here. Just go back as far as you need to make any corrections. And then it is time, when you are satisfied that you've done it correctly, time to go ahead and add this to the cart and check out. So I'm going to click on Add to Cart. And you have 2 ways to pay up here at the top. Oh, I'm a little early here. So we're going to go ahead and check out. And then you want to pay attention to these next options. So you can pay and deposit directly from a bank account or paid from a credit card or ACH. And I'm going to go ahead and click on Pay from Credit Card or ACH. And This is quite a few steps, as you can see. It is a government site after all, although I have to admit that I do think that this is not a bad site, and it steps you through pretty well. The next thing that you're ready to do is go ahead and click OK. Do you want to proceed? OK. And then you're going to again choose whether you want to pay with a withdrawal from your bank account or you want to pay with a credit card. And we're going to go ahead and pay with a credit card. And continue. Okay, going to be doing some blurring out here. In fact, I'm just going to kind of skip over this entire section here, but you can see that you're just going to put in some of your information, and then down here at the bottom, your credit card information, and you'll hit continue when that is all done. The one thing that I will point out to you here is that when you hit continue, it comes back and shows you what appears to be the same thing, same screen again, but all it's looking for is for you to hit this checkbox and hit continue again. When you have successfully put in your credit card information, you will receive this screen with a lot of red lettering up at the top. But basically, it's just allowing you to see that you have completed your transaction successfully and that you are ready to continue. Now, as your final step, you need to upload your content. And this is pretty straightforward, although it can take a little while if you have a large WAV file. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit the green button here to select files to upload. And then I'm going to navigate to my directory that contains the content that I want. And I have created a WAV file just for this purpose. So that is what I'm going to upload. However, before I do that, I am going to double check and make sure that that is the correct content. I've got this same directory in a Finder window over here, and I'm just going to double click that. I'm going to make sure that it contains the content that I want. When you are certain that the file has the content that you want to upload, go ahead and select it. And when you're ready, start your upload. This, of course, will take a varying amount of time depending on the size of your content. And when you see this final message, you'll know you have completed your copyright registration application, and your copyright will now be in process. If you return to your home screen, you'll see that your new registration with a new ID number is indeed at the top of your list. And that your upload status is complete. And that the status of the application is open. Congratulations, you have completed your copyright registration process. After you have submitted your copyright application for evaluation, you'll immediately receive an email from the Copyright Office acknowledging your application. If you don't receive that email, it may mean that you didn't put your email address in correctly. And the good news is that you can go back to your application at any time during the evaluation process and update it with additional information or corrections to the information that you submitted initially. So, at any point, go ahead and fix the information if you need to. Other communication that you'll receive from the Copyright Office includes any corrective action or questions that they have about your submission. That did happen to me one time in my 18 submissions, and it just took me a moment or two to fix it. It probably extended the time of that particular application just a little bit. The evaluation period currently, post-COVID, and it did slow the Copyright Office down, as most other government offices were slowed down, is approximately 2 months. So the initial evaluation is about 2 months, at which point you will receive communication that indicates that you have been awarded a copyright. And you'll have the necessary information that you need right then and there to continue your publishing process. Within about 2 months after that, you will receive a letter from the Copyright Office that looks like this. And this is a pretty straightforward, simple letter. You can see that it has the copyright registration number on it. I have blanked out a couple of things because even though we're friends, you don't need to know what year I was born or my address. So pretty straightforward information about your copyright here. Notice one thing about this. Notice that it says that not only did I copyright the music, but also that I was the author of the lyrics and the music. And the reason that it says this is because when I filled out that authorship section, I did put in that separate line to indicate that I was the author of the music and lyrics. So it's important that you do that just to make it clear that you are submitting your application for both. This is the end of part 2 of our Publishing Your Music series. I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave comments, corrections, or any additional information that you feel is important here on the channel. And we'll see you for part 3 in this series here on Happy Place Home Studio.